Hello and welcome to Adoption Pop, where a podcast journalist,
a filmmaker,
and a cultural critic burst pop culture's favorite adoption tropes.
Because we're adopted.
Hey, Kristal, you are our resident musician. Do you have certain songs that specifically remind you of your family or Stuart or your kids?
Yes. So my husband, he hyper fixates on songs, which means that we all get to listen to them on repeat for months at a time. For instance, he will find his summer jam, like his summer song, and then he plays it all summer long. The song that reminds me of my family the most is Travis Tritt's It's a Great Day to Be Alive. We sing that in the car all together. And we just belt it.
give us a line, girl.
'Cause it's a great day to be alive. I know the sun's still shining when I close my eyes. It's hard times in the neighborhood. Yeah, go on. Go listen to it. It's a good one. Do you know who Travis Tritt is, both of you?
I know who Travis Tritt is.
I mean, I've heard of him, but it's not really it's not my vibe, but that's okay.
No, he's got a really deep kind of country voice. I just love it.
Okay. Well, this week's movie tells a love story, or kind of one anyway, through a series of songs. Penny's Serenade, starring Irene Dunne and Cary Grant, released from Columbia Pictures in 1941 to positive reviews. Cary Grant considered the film his best performance. It garnered him his first Oscar nomination for his portrayal of newspaperman Roger Adams. Based on the novella The Story of a Happy Marriage by Martha Cheavens, it tells the semi-autobiographical story of a married couple's multiple attempts to build their family through adoption. That's my articulation, though. If you look up Penny's Serenade on IMDb, you will read the logline, "A couple's big dreams give way to a life full of unforeseen sadness and unexpected joy." Haley, did you experience unforeseen sadness and unexpected joy when watching this movie?
I'm going to say a yes to unforeseen sadness. I was worried when this came up in our list of films to do that it was going to ruin Cary Grant for me. And yeah, I'm really sad about that.
Did it ruin Cary Grant for you?
I don't think so, but it's been a while since I watched an old movie. I used to watch old movies all the time. I truly did love Cary Grant movies. When I was a teen, I don't know what channel, TBS, what played old movies. I watched so many old movies. And now I'm like, dang, my attention span is shot. Also, the only unexpected joy that came from watching this movie is one time I watched it with my son Griffin, who's 11 at the time we're recording this. And he kept saying things like, are they outside? That looks like a painted background. and there's an earthquake and, the collapse of the buildings. He's like, this looks fake. Things have come a long way, baby.
Yeah.
Ain't that the truth?
Why don't we do this? Why don't we dive in? But I think we should dive right into the earthquake scene, because I don't know how the two of you felt about this, but to me, the movie didn't start until the earthquake happened, which is about 40 minutes in. So in the first 40 minutes, they meet, they fall in love, now they're married.
Can I just ask, who picked this movie, first of all? Second of all,
Raise your hand.
who picked this movie? Raise your hand.
It was me.
Okay, now my next question is, how old were you the first time you seen it?
How old was I 2 days ago?
No.
I've never seen this before.
Have you seen this before, Haley?
No.
Me
Never seen
neither.
this movie? On this podcast, nobody's seen this movie.
Okay, I thought that it was one of the two of yours childhood movie that your adopted parents made you watch, and like you had some sort of emotional connection to it. I don't know why I created this story in my head.
Have you met us?
And I thought this was like your moment of reckoning to be like, we're gonna critique this thing on Adoption Pop to just validate how messed up the fact that my parents made me watch this movie over and over and over was.
None of that happened.
Okay. moving along.
No, okay, so but I did pick it. And so I will tell you how I picked it, which is to think kind of thematically as far as things that are happening. And at the time that we're recording this, we're headed into a new year. And so I wondered, is there a New Year's movie with adoption in it? And so I took to Google, and this movie came up because it opens on a New Year's Eve and is set on sort of an annual look back calendar. So that's how it came up. And then when I started doing research, I discovered that it had been quite a very popular movie at the time that it came out in 1941. And in fact, today, if you search around online, contemporary critics that watch it, it continues to get very high ratings from people as being a movie that people seem to really continue to love and pull at their heartstrings. And so I thought it would be really interesting to do, because this is a movie that potentially our adoptive parents, our birth parents, or our grandparents, sort of depending upon whom, this may have been a movie that they grew up with, or they grew up with knowing. And so I thought it would be really interesting then to look at it from that standpoint, because to date we've only done more contemporary movies, and so I was interested from that perspective. So that's why I picked it.
Okay, I love that. I'm going to call my dad right after this and ask if he'd ever seen it, because he's 82 and he knows exactly who Cary Grant is. I'm really curious to see if he ever watched it.
Well, and in fact, this was Cary Grant's first Oscar nomination for this film as well. And so we were joking before, the first 40 minutes of the movie, Cary Grant and Irene Dunne, they play Roger and Julie. They meet, they fall in love, they get married. That's really all you need to know. That for our purposes, all you need to know that happens in the first 40 minutes of the movie.
Except they meet at a store that sells vinyl, and so that does feel contemporary.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, contemporary to who? To whomst? To
My
whomst
dad.
is that
My dad's obsessed with vinyl.
Okay, but they're living in Japan. He's working for a newspaper when they are married, and there is a terrible earthquake. Julie is pregnant. Importantly, Julie is pregnant with their first child, and there is a terrible earthquake. And she loses her baby, and also learns that because of her injuries, she can no longer have children. I have thoughts about this since we're now diving in head first. But before I share my thoughts about this, do either of you have any thoughts about this?
Kristal, I would like you to make a comment on the fortune cookie fortune being filmed on the ground and having bricks fall on it. And the fortune, I believe, says, you will get your wish, a baby.
Yes.
Filmmaker, comment, please.
It was so weird. It was like clearly the piece of paper had been made bigger, and then there was like bricks falling on it. I don't know. What else do you want me to say? It was so cheesy. It was very, very cheesy.
Yes, but now we know this dream is dead.
The dream is dead. There was a lot of interesting ways that they used the camera to foreshadow maybe what was going to happen, and I thought it was really cheesy. Can we just say though, like, this relationship that the two of them have, yes, they're very much in love, but he made some sort of comment at one time that he didn't like children. And she was afraid to tell him that she was pregnant because he didn't like children. And there's a few moments like that where she's afraid to tell him something, and then she tells him, and then he reacts wonderfully to it. And I just thought, what is up with this woman? Like, why is she so afraid to communicate?
I took it as what would have been the gender dynamics at the time, that woman wants marriage and baby, full stop. Husband wants to remain, or man wants to remain bachelor. That's what it is. That men want to be bachelors, women want to be married and have babies. And that was the expectation of the audience in the time. That's what I took it as, which is also why I found this plot point of the earthquake and the miscarriage really interesting, because as is going to go forward, they are going to adopt a baby. And it could have been the storyline that Julie was simply unable to carry a child. It could have been a storyline that it was Roger that was unable to impregnate her. But that's not the storyline. The storyline is she could in fact get pregnant and carry a child, and only through this horrible accident does she become unable to carry further children. And in my head, this was an absolving of fault of hers from a societal standpoint, right? Like at the time, well, if a woman can't have a baby, she's done something wrong, right? Like she's not particularly sympathetic. But if she is the victim of a horrible accident, now she's sympathetic. It's not actually her fault, because in fact she could do the thing. We know she could do the thing, and this accident has prevented her from being able to have a baby. That was my read on the earthquake.
Yeah, and even if she had have had a miscarriage in a natural way without this earthquake, it's still, as someone who has had miscarriages, you feel like, oh, was it my fault? Was it something I did or I didn't do? And I think that's exactly to your point, that this outside tragedy absolved her of any responsibility that it could possibly in any way be her fault at all.
Yeah. And then would allow the viewer, the audience, to be completely empathetic and completely sympathetic to her.
Oh, I totally agree. I think it's so telling about how we think about women and their fertility. And yes, this is like old fashioned, and yet it's not. I mean, there's certainly people that believe those things. All actually, what I was rolling around the back of my head was, it's an act of God. It's a visual act of God, this earthquake. But we don't think about that if it's something physical is wrong with you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so they return to the United States from Japan after this horrible earthquake, and they're going about their marriage. And at some point, there is a conversation about adoption with a family friend whose name is Applejack. I'm a huge Applejack fan, by the way. I mean, we'll get more to this. I think Applejack was my favorite person in this whole movie.
I'm still wondering who the heck Applejack is. Like, I thought, is it her brother? It seems like this family friend that's desperately in love with Julie. And yeah, I was very confused as to who he was.
I have a theory about who Applejack is or why Applejack is in the story, but I'm going to hold it till later.
Okay.
But I have strong feelings about Applejack. Other than being a fan, I'm an Applejack fan. in this movie.
He's very useful.
He's very useful. But so they have a conversation about adopting. Applejack is sitting at dinner with Julie. They're having dinner. He sort of says like, "Hey, you should have like there should be children running around here," and discloses to her that in fact he was an orphan, and so they should adopt.
I know I'm an adopted kid myself. I know that's not much of a recommendation, but I didn't turn out so bad.
Besides, some regular kids wind up in jail.
You can get some pretty good ones that way. And he also says, walk in, help yourself to exactly what you want. No guesswork.
I have so many notes. You two, you're going to see me. Anyone who's watching on YouTube is like, what is she doing? Like, I have so many notes for this movie. I went down a whole bunch of rabbit holes.
Okay, so we love Applejack because he's adopted. And he's just used as a plot device to keep the story going.
No, I don't. I actually...
You don't think so?
No.
Huh.
Okay, so maybe can I give a little bit of background?
Okay.
Please.
Not on Applejack specifically, but this is related. This is Applejack adjacent. He's talking about being an orphan, go in, pick anyone you want. I was curious about, this is 1941. I was curious about like what the status was then of orphanages, quite frankly. Because we know the child they adopt comes from an orphanage. Like orphanages as an institution play a prevalent part in this film, which I think is different from what we think about from a contemporary standpoint, right? And so I did a little bit of research, and in fact, during the mid-30s, the number of children in institutional care in the U.S. reached an all-time high of about 144,000 children. And this was immediately after the orphan train movement, which if people are not familiar with the orphan train movement, this was a period of time from, late 19th century through early 20th century where children, sometimes they were in fact orphans and sometimes they were not orphans, but were literally put on trains and sent out of cities to be ostensibly adopted, but really this was free labor for people. And so that was known as the orphan train movement, which ended around 1929. And so you had this spike of kids in orphanages in the mid-30s. The other thing that was going on at the same time is at the beginning of the 20th century, there was this huge conference that was the proceedings. It was the Child Conference for Research and Welfare. All of these people in child welfare all got together. They had this big 2-day conference and they talked about sort of like, what do we do with all these kids? And like, let's take a look at like all of these kids and how they're faring. And one of the big takeaways from that conference was that orphanages are not good for children. They don't thrive there. They can be dangerous. The best thing for kids is for kids to be cared for at homes. And so you see this investment coming out of that in foster care as a way to deal with all of these children. So in this period of 1941, you had this transition from orphanages that now, we recognize these can be not healthy places for kids, into we need to find foster homes for the kids. Another interesting part, because then we see this in the movie, is this conference for research and welfare came out with like 10 or 12 recommendations. But the number one was children of worthy parents or deserving mothers. Worthy parents of deserving mothers should, as a rule, be kept with their parents at home. So this idea of, we use the term family preservation now. So yes, kids should be kept with their parents. But what I thought was really interesting is what this conference said is, no, children of worthy parents or deserving mothers. And then you see, right, this judgment coming out of like, who's a worthy parent? and who's a
Right.
deserving mother. That like goes through, we're still dealing with that question today. But this is the time frame as far as it relates to orphans and orphanages that you're seeing at the time that this movie is set, which is a lot of kids in orphanages and a recognition that they're better off in homes. So therefore you have these adults that will go and pick, as Applejack suggests, just go get one. Go get one that you might like, and it's less risk.
So during this time, they're really trying to destigmatize adoption because being infertile, as we mentioned, was like totally stigmatized. There's something you did wrong. And so if you adopted, that was shameful because it was showing that you had this defect in some way. And so parents would keep it a secret that that their children were adopted from anyone. Like it was totally frowned upon. And so we saw Georgia Tann, again, this historical figure, trying to glamorize and popularize adoption for her own personal profit. And so thanks, Sullivan, for the little history lesson there, because there's these things are like starting to come together to like popularize the modern day adoption industry.
Well, and you also had the stigma on the adopted child. Right? It's you have on birth certificates legitimate or illegitimate on birth certificates, which my original birth certificate, which I'm fortunate enough to have, not a lot of it, the majority of adoptees don't have legal access to their original birth certificates. But I was born in a state where I have access, and you have the illegitimate checkbox on the birth certificate, which is something that hasn't changed. Even if stigma-wise, it's different today.
It might have moved to a little checkbox. It used to be a giant stamp.
I only have
illegitimate or bastard. Like we would get,
Did they have bastard stamps?
Royal treatment.
Did they have bastard stamps?
I don't know. In my head, they did.
They might as well have.
Someone tell us in the comments. Someone tell us.
We can get one.
So Applejack brings this idea up to Julie. He's already ran it past Roger. Julie and Roger just don't talk to each other about important things. So Applejack's the go-between. And I guess they've both been thinking about adoption, and Applejack, happy adoptee, has helped them find their way to the light. And so Roger and Julie visit Miss Oliver, the social worker, to discuss adoption. Is this even a possibility for them?
I couldn't get over the language that was being used. Every time they said something, I clutched my pearls. Every time. They're driving to the orphanage and Julie says, I've been doing the shopping in this family for some time now. I don't just come home with anything. Roger really wants a boy. They have a specific order that they want to place for a child. This child to have curly hair and blue eyes and be 2 years old, more or less housebroken in Roger's words.
It's so bad. And the reason for the 2-year-old child, not just housebroken, that would be the age of the child that they lost in the earthquake. So
right.
A true replacement baby.
Before they are so lucky to get what they ordered, I want to go back to something that I think you said, Kristal, that or maybe Haley, I'm sorry, when you said Applejack, the happy adoptee. I don't think Applejack was adopted. Applejack was an orphan and in an orphanage, but I don't think he was adopted.
He says, I'm an adopted kid myself.
He says adopted kid myself?
He literally says, I'm an adopted kid myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I missed that. Well, so they put an order in, and while their order is pending, working its way through the fulfillment center, Miss Oliver goes and does a home visit. And she's looking around. She sees the bedroom, which is a very nice bedroom. And she says any kid would be lucky to have a room like this. And then she says, a baby came in yesterday, a girl. To which Roger says, we don't want a girl. Who wants a girl? But she says she's exactly the child for you. She's like no other child. A special baby. She doesn't say special baby. That's what I said. We talked about special baby.
She says she's promised to someone else though, right? And then but I'm going to tell you first. It's so weird.
It's so shady. Wink, wink, nod, nod. We promised her to someone else. But why do you think Miss Oliver wants to give them the baby?
Cause Julie's pretty.
I thought that Miss Oliver was saying all of those things because it's like, when you go to buy a car or a house and someone's like, and like the realtor says, oh, we've got someone else about to put an offer in on this house, so like you better make your decision now. And it's the sales pitch to put pressure on. That's the way I read that.
Oh, that Miss Oliver was doing a little high pressure tactic because they didn't want a girl.
Yeah. I agree with Kristal because she uses the same tactic later. No spoilers yet, but
yeah.
She uses the same tactic, and I totally read that too.
So this boy girl thing was really triggering for me as somebody who was going to be with one family if I was a boy and with another family if I was a girl. And right down to, my adoptive dad feeling like, well, we don't need another baby. Our kids are already 11 and 15 years old. And my mother really, really wanted another baby. And he was sort of what it has always felt like doing it for her. And I see this unfold between Roger and Julie as he makes it very clear that he doesn't want a girl, that he only wants a boy. Yeah, it was just I will say it was a little bit triggering and kind of hit home for me.
I think we know it happens, right? I think for the adoptive parents who will say, well, we don't care, we just want a baby. There are absolutely adoptive parents who have very clear vision in their mind of what they want, whether it's gender or appearance, race, ethnicity, and people do ask for those things. So Roger and Julie do in fact take the baby girl home, baby Trina, and they bring baby Trina home, and there is this first night home comedic sequence of getting the baby to go to sleep in the bed and feeding her. There's a sequence also where Applejack comes to visit for the first time and helps to bathe baby Trina, which I found a very endearing sequence. I thought it was really sweet to watch Applejack sort of stepped in after Roger and Julie were having trouble figuring, how do you hold the baby in the water and this and that and put the diaper on, and Applejack stepped in and did it. What I thought was really interesting though in doing some research again about the time was that the way that they talked about that particular sequence at the time, the director, was that was actually comedic relief in the movie. The idea that you would have a man that knows how to bathe a child and diaper a child was pure comedy at the time, as opposed to what I saw it now is this very endearing moment where this essentially an uncle figure comes in and cares for the child.
I found it all really upsetting, actually.
And what? Talk about that.
When they get Trina at the orphanage and Roger and Julie are both like, but we don't have any stuff yet. We have no clothes for her. What do you feed her? And they're totally ignorant of what you do with a baby. And she's kind of like, yeah, we got a tin of formula for you, and you can go to the store, and just kind of shoos them out. And so all of these ignorances of Roger and Julie are upsetting to me, because I'm like, God, you literally would just let her go home with a warm body. Great. Because they're white and they appear affluent. They've lied to appear affluent, but they are not. And so have at her. Like, thank God Applejack is there to show them that, like, I was like, well, thank goodness somebody knows what they're doing. Because who else? Like, they don't even ask those questions. They can't call Miss Oliver and be like, oh my goodness, we need help with bathing. Like, I mean, I remember having my first baby, and the nurse literally showed us how to give him a bath and make sure you do XYZ, and just, between us three. When I had my second baby, the nurse came in at some point during the day and asked me, oh, have you burped him yet? And I was like, oh, I forgot that was a thing. It's not been quite 2 years, but I still forgot. Like, all the staff at the hospital, they're helping you know what to do with an infant. And just the fact that Trina had nobody that would advocate for literally how to do things was upsetting.
I just like I hear you on that. I also feel like if they were her biological parents, would we have more grace for them not knowing how to care for her?
I think perhaps I'm looking at this from a contemporary point of view, where when I was pregnant, I had the baby books. What do you do with a baby? What do what do you do when you're expecting? Like, all of those things. And like, I was trying to learn all the way along. And then the baby appears and it's like, I don't know how to breastfeed. Like, somebody
Yeah.
come and help me. Like, is he actually getting anything? Like, all of those things. But and so when they had to wait for a year, I'm like, what have you been doing? Did you not take out a book from the library? Like, did you not talk to anybody about how to be a parent? Like, there's no prep at all. And they had a waiting period, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that.
I think that what you're talking about, Haley, hit me in two ways. One is, I think about from a contemporary standpoint, whatever the waiting period is, which is much longer than it was in this movie also, right? Like years. And I think about the number of particularly transnational adoptees and adoptive parents that adopt transnationally, and they have waited years and the child comes home and they know nothing about the child's language, they know nothing about the child's culture, they know none of those things. And I always think, what have you been doing for 2 years that you couldn't
exactly.
learn the language? So that hit me, what you just said. The other piece about the kind of sprung on them surprise that did hit me, that I made a note of, is there is this waiting period. To your point, there is a home visit, but the way that it sounds in the film is like, essentially they get the call and like, here's a baby, come get the baby now, type of thing. So from that standpoint, it's a surprise. Like, they didn't necessarily know that morning, and now this afternoon they have a baby. And when Roger tells Applejack, like, I didn't write down what he says, but he says something like, well, the baby's here now. And Applejack's like, what? The baby's here now? I didn't know the baby's here now. And goes right to the house to see and welcome the baby. And what hit me there was, like, it seemed to me there was no conversation to prepare, like, the extended family, to the extent that Applejack is really the only extended family we see in this film. But there's no attempt to prepare the extended family that the baby is coming. And that's a piece that hit me really hard, because my adoptive mom used to love to tell this story that that when I arrived, and the first time my paternal adoptive grandparents came to see me that my grandfather said, "Is she what you expected?" And what he meant was, did you expect a black child? Let's be clear. Is she what you expected? And my mother said, yes. And he said, well, okay then. And she would tell this story as a very loving sort of story. And I'm like, you knew I was not going to be white. You knew that. And you didn't tell anyone? Why did you not tell anyone? Were you hoping that I wasn't really going to be? You waiting to see like really what shade I was? Were you like, I don't, it's a question I never got to ask, and I will never get to ask it at this point. But I think about, again, from a transracial standpoint, the whole family should have been preparing for years for this. And you didn't even tell anyone?
I was reminded in the orphanage when they bring baby Trina out to them and the beautiful strings start to play. And music in film is a huge emoter. But it reminded me of Connor Howe. And he has adopted Connor, and he shows these, hopeful these adoptive parents receiving their adopted child for the first time, but he removes the music and shows how different it translates. And so as baby Trina comes out, the music starts, and I found even myself going, oh.
I didn't have any warm feels because I was too busy cringing about the stuff coming out of Roger's mouth. Like, I'm going to read. I'm going to unabashedly read. She's got your smile, Roger. Then he says, when do we get to own her outright?
For goodness sake.
When is the lease up?
But Trina was free, right? Because they didn't have any money. So wasn't she free?
No, she checked, but they checked to make sure they had money, right? Because they lied about how much money they had.
Right. But I don't think they had to pay anything because they wouldn't have been able to afford it. So they keep talking about her as though she's a purchase, but I don't know that they actually paid anything for Trina. Unlike some of us.
Unlike us.
I was under $500.
I don't know how much money I cost because somebody redacted my records and refused to tell me.
Well, I think I was free. State baby.
Okay. A year goes by. And it's a year in baby Trina's life. I have to say, right. So one of the reasons this movie was popular was because it was one of the first times that they had baby actors on set. There were two baby Trinas. There were two 1-year-old Trinas also. And can I just, as a side note, 1-year-old baby Trinas needed an Oscar. Those 1-year-old baby Trinas, the acting, phenomenal.
The giggles.
The giggling.
The giggling. So cute. But like perfectly timed. And the serious face. And the looks. Like, bravo, 1-year-old baby Trina.
I want to see what she looks like now. We should look her up.
You should look her up. I didn't look her up. But a year goes by, and now they have to see the judge to know whether or not they get to keep baby Trina. But Roger has lost his job. Like not only did he lie at the beginning about how much money he made, but now he's legit lost his job. And so that's going to be a problem because they don't have any money to care for baby Trina. And so they go before the judge and have a I will say also, we're gonna circle back on the source material, but I will say right now that this scene with the judge was added from the original source material. This was an added scene for the screenplay, the back and forth with the judge. Did you have any thoughts? I wrote so many notes about I think I might have. Haley's much better at transcribing. You're much better at transcribing than I do. So I want to hear from Haley, the judge combo.
what's credited with Cary Grant's Oscar nomination for Best Actor is this scene. So he puts on one heck of a performance. I just have a couple highlights, lowlights here from his speech. It just doesn't seem reasonable that we should have to give her back now to strangers. But you were a stranger, Roger. Just saying.
She has a smile, though.
Well, only according to Julie. But I ask you, Judge, how can you give up your own child? Truly, how can you? She is our child just as much as if she'd been born to us. Why, we walked the floor with her when she had colic. This triggered me because I had colic as a baby. And colic is one of those diagnoses that doctors give when they're just like, they're a crier. It's sort of like this indeterminate thing. And I've talked to so many adopted people who also had colic. And, you know, often the general consensus, I mean, that I'll speak for myself, I come to, it's like, yeah, I was crying, wondering where my mom was. We've lost nights of sleep worrying every time she got a tooth. We've gone through everything that real parents have with one of their own. She doesn't know any parents but us. She wouldn't know what had happened to her. You see, there's so many little things about her nobody would understand her the way Julie and I do. This child is ours, Judge. We've had her since she was 6 weeks old. It just doesn't seem reasonable that we should have to give her back now to strangers.
Can I add one more? She's not like an automobile or piece of furniture. When you can't make the payment, they take it away from you.
This judge is so clear that in order for an adoption to be finalized, the adoptive parents have to have financial stability. He chastises Miss Oliver, like, literally, why am I even seeing this case? Like, because these people are not qualified to adopt Trina. They have no financial means. But Julie's so pretty that Miss Oliver's like, no, Judge, like, this is a special case. Tell me, anyone, please, what is special about this case? They're broke. Who knows what happened with Trina's parents, why she was at the orphanage. Perhaps her living parents were broke. Maybe she really was an orphan. Like, what are the special circumstances?
He's Cary Grant. Cary Grant and Irene Dunne. What more do you need to know?
Okay, wait. So Julie's pretty, and it's Cary Grant.
And it's Cary Grant.
Okay.
At the end of his speech, though, I know, like, because this, to your point, he was so good. The speech was so good at garnering an Oscar nomination. The last thing he says, after all those things that you talked about, is, I'm asking for her sake, too. Right? Like, essentially, Roger's saying, Julie and I deserve the baby. We earned this baby. And if you go back to when I talked about that, the 1909 conference order, right? Like, worthy parents. Judge, we are worthy. We have earned this baby. We are owed this baby. And oh, by the way, it'll be good for her too.
Okay, here I go. And I don't want to be known as an adoptive parent apologist, but I empathized deeply with these parents. And I kept thinking to myself, like, what if somebody decided that my parents couldn't have me anymore after I was a year old? And I really don't want to discount the bond that does happen between an adoptive parent and the child. I have not been an adoptive parent, but I also don't want to discount the love that an adoptive parent has for their child. So I found myself being like very empathetic to this scene. You know, it's almost like how I feel about adoption and that whole idea of being able to hold two things at one time. And I know that for the purpose of a podcast like this, we are critiquing these tropes. We're pulling out all the messed up things that they're saying that just really, for an adoptee, it hits us hard. But I will say on the other side of things, I was reminded of how loved I really was. And how embraced I really was, and how celebrated I really was, and how much stress my mother went through at the thought of somebody coming and taking me away. All of those things were swirling around for me. But with this scene, the thing that I was the most concerned about was if baby Trina was going to fall off that chair.
No, because she was
Roger
such
told
a
her
good
to stay there.
actor.
I was like, somebody better watch that baby that she doesn't crawl off that chair and hit her head.
I mean, Kristal, I don't think I would argue and say, like, no, I of course I want Trina to be removed from truly the only parents she's known since she was 5 weeks old. So I totally see that. Thank you for sharing that point of view. Totally valid.
And I think what you said that most hit me, Kristal, is the ability to hold two things at once, which I know as adoptees, we're oftentimes run into the world having to do that.
Yeah.
We have to do it all the time. And for me, when I think about like these discussions that we're having and their critiquing of media that we're doing, for me, I find myself critiquing so strongly because these films don't hold two things.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. They hold one thing.
Exactly.
And they hold one side. I mean, the power of pop culture, the power of media is that it delivers messages to us, often without realizing that we are in the receipt of very specific messages. And so this film, if I can take a step back into real life for a second around this film before we come back and sort of reach what is the climax of the film, is I mentioned before that this was based on a short story written by Martha Cheavens. It's autobiographical. So now I did go searching for the short story, which was published in the August 1940 issue of McCall's magazine, which is not accessible online. I have ordered a copy though, so that'll be a side note. At the time we are recording this, I have not read the story, but by the time that you all are listening to this, I will probably have a lot more things to say on social media about the underlying story.
I can't wait. Thank you for doing that.
What I did find, though, is some biographical information about Martha Cheavens. Somebody in her family has posted a family tree online, which I do have, and which I didn't. By the way, it wasn't that hard to find, and it's not like I didn't go snooping. I'll say this is I'm not a what do you call it when you know how to like do fancy pants internet things?
Sleuth?
No, not
An
that way, but
internet
I'm not
sleuth?
that. Anyway, I'm just saying it was like a couple of Google searches. So like people should like lock their stuff down. But anyway, I do have the family tree. And the family tree shows that when Martha and her husband, who was a newspaper man, were living in Japan, they had a son. And then they had a son in 1926, and in 1932 they adopted a daughter who was 6 weeks old in New York. And that daughter lived into old age and had a large family of her own. But I don't know if in fact a baby was lost in between those two children, but the author of the underlying story was in fact an adoptive mother. And so was Irene Dunne as well.
Irene
fact,
Dunne
is Julie.
Julie.
And Julie said
Interesting.
this was the favorite movie she ever did, or Irene Dunne said this is the favorite movie she ever did because it reminded her of her own adopted daughter. And in fact, at this time that we talked about, and you know, this is again the time of Georgia Tann, who we know built a business off of celebrity adoptions. I will read you. This is a very brief excerpt. Or very brief story, but this is from the New York Times, March 17th of 1938, so 3 years before Penny Serenade came out. Irene Dunne adopts baby. Actress formally becomes foster mother of girl 4. Irene Dunne, screen actress, and her husband, Dr. Francis Griffin, have adopted a 4-year-old girl whom they have named Mary Frances. It was learned yesterday at the county clerk's office, where the adoption order is on file. The adoption order was signed in surrogate's court on Monday. The child was Anna Mary Bush, an inmate of the New York Foundling Hospital. She has been living with her foster parents for the last year. The adoption papers were witnessed by Sister Dominia Maria, a registered nurse and mother of the Foundling Institution. So reported in the New York Times, Irene Dunne adopts a baby. We changed her name. This was her old name. This is her new name. Here's who witnessed it.
I'm sorry. Did they use the word inmate?
Yes. Yes.
What the actual?
Kristal, you've actually made the point on a prior episode. You made the point on episode 2 about the Grinch, about the orphanages and orphans and how orphans are treated, right? And here we have the New York Foundling Hospital, which was an orphanage, and they were called inmates, which I did find in other research. This inmate was the common term for the children there.
Ew.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have this situation where the author, a writer, writes what she acknowledges is an autobiographical story about an adoption from an adoptive mother's point of view, that then gets made into a film starring an adoptive mother playing an adoptive mother. And so when people watch this, all of this is underlying what people are seeing and taking away as being, oh, this is what adoption is. But it's such a singular point of view.
Well, let me just be the Debbie Downer here. Because why does Irene Dunne love this movie so much? Because we have a Christmas play where Trina, she doesn't even get to be visible. She's singing a little. She's the angel. And Griffin, my son, thought this part was really cool because you kind of saw backstage. And she's like, has to push this cloud over the manger. And then she's like hidden, and it's a little bit cool. And then the Star of David, like, it comes up over the stable.
I have
Yes?
a question. Do you think her role in the Christmas play was foreshadowing?
1,000%. 1,000%.
Well, and there's a cute little tumble. She's so embarrassed, but there's always next year where she could be up front and get a real part.
Be seen.
So.
But that's not
am I
what
gonna
happens.
Say it?
Yeah, you should
Just
say it. Just
If
say it.
if anyone's gonna say it, it's gotta be you.
Why?
I don't know.
I like to crush people's hopes and dreams. So we then cut to a handwritten letter in cursive writing where Julie is writing to Miss Oliver, and basically the gist of it is, well, Trina died. Darn. And my husband, he's not talking to me. So,
Inconsolable.
yeah.
Shocker. They're not talking about the grief of that they're experiencing. Shocker.
Why would they? They never grieved the fact that that earthquake killed their first baby and the chances to have a child of their own to use their own language against them.
But okay, but we need to land the
Yeah.
plane. We need to land the
Please.
plane on this movie. Young Trina passes away. And in fact, we come full circle in the film that Julie and Roger are definitely getting a divorce because they cannot communicate because they are so grief-stricken by the death of their child, which you can empathize with. And in what is the last scene of the film, as they are departing their apartment to go their separate ways as a divorced couple, the phone rings. Who's on the phone?
Miss Oliver.
Miss Oliver. There's a baby, a boy with blonde hair, blonde curly hair, the one exactly like you asked for 5 years ago. We've got one. It should supposed to go to another couple, but I'll give it to you. And what do Julie and Roger do? They begin talking about, oh, okay, we'll be right there. Divorce is off. The divorce is off. They're gonna like get the room ready because now we've because we found a replacement. We found a replacement baby for baby Trina. We have the boy we always wanted.
Fixed.
Done. The end.
Okay. This film was difficult for me because I saw it through a mother's lens, through an adoptee's lens, and then, of course, through a critical lens. It was really just a shitstorm of emotions that I was feeling with this particular film. But I was angered by the ending because my question is, what's the point? What's the point? Why did she die? Like, I don't understand what the point of this ending was. And I'm sure it's clear as day, and I'm sure the two of you are going to tell me. But it just really irritated me. What was the point? What was the end game of killing off Trina?
It was the sentimental. It was to make you cry as an audience member. It was to pull at your heartstrings. Yes.
It's a melodrama. So in the 40s, divorce was still totally shameful. And we didn't really mention this, but at the beginning of the film, right, she's contemplating divorce. And so that had to be fixed somehow. And so the new replacement baby is the only fix for that. And if Trina had lived happily ever after, so would they.
It was dumb. I didn't like it.
I want to say one more thing, and then I think Haley's going to give an award. I mentioned before about finding this family tree, and we had a conversation, I think it was in episode 2, about our as adoptees are being identified on family trees and in Bibles and those kinds of things. And so I thought I found it just sort of interesting that when Irene Dunne passed away in 1990. And in her obituary, it says she was married for 37 years to Dr. Francis D. Griffin, a dentist and later a businessman. He died in 1965. In 1938, they adopted their daughter from the New York Foundling Hospital. And so that's in Irene Dunne's obituary, calling out their daughter as being adopted. And then when their daughter passed away in 2020, and when their daughter passed away, her obituary says she is preceded in death by her husband Bob and her adoptive parents Francis Griffin and Irene Dunne Griffin, who brought her to Los Angeles as a toddler and welcomed her into their lives with endless love. And reflecting, Kristal, on what you talked about, having to hold multiple things at once, that, again, this for all appearances, appeared to be, a loving child and loving her parents very much. But for me, what came through with that is like the intense need to show gratitude in the obituary, to not just say she was preceded by, but that let's not forget, don't let anybody forget this child was adopted. And, she ought to be grateful for that, even, almost 70 years later.
Before I give my award, I just want to mention I did do a little, what do the kept people think about this movie investigation, and we'll link the podcast episode I listened to, but it was a film critique episode, and the commentary around this phone call with the replacement baby was very much our view, cringe, what the heck. And I was like, interesting. So you can see that baby as a replacement baby, but you can't go backwards and see that Trina was adopted as a replacement baby for their natural baby they lost in the earthquake. So it's award time, friends. And this is going to honor Cary Grant from The Side. Now, he got nominated for an Oscar, but he didn't win. So I felt that this award had to be Oscar worthy. Okay, so this is sort of in the lens. I'm going to read this out. Distinguished co-hosts, emotionally resilient attendees, and to those trapped inside a 1940s melodrama, I am proud, or perhaps morally concerned, to present this episode's award, the Adoption Propaganda Prestige Prize, to Penny Serenade. This film is recognized for its exceptional dedication to the timeless cinematic formula. When your marriage is crumbling, your finances are unstable, and your communications skills are non-existent, just adopt a child. No therapy, no accountability, no self-reflection required. We commend Penny Serenade for its innovative use as adoptees, as narrative glue, emotional scaffolding, and general purpose problem-solving devices. And in a bold, creative move, when the first child can no longer serve the plot, the movie simply introduces a second one, made to order. Truly a masterclass in prioritizing adult redemption arcs over child welfare. Including Applejack, who, I argue, as an adult adoptee, is still only a placeholder to move our plot forward and to embody that grateful adoptee trope when he encourages Roger and Julie to adopt. For its service in ensuring audiences walk away believing adoption is a convenient reset button rather than a lifelong complex human relationship, we honor Penny Serenade with this prestigious and unsettling award.
Bravo.
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 Thank you. Well done.
Adoption Pop is podcaster Haley Radke,
Filmmaker Kristal Parke,
And cultural critic Sullivan Summer. In researching this episode, we relied on Giant, George Stevens' A Life on Film by Marilyn Ann Moss. Love Endures All in Penny Serenade by Mia Lorenzo for WLRN. Marshall B. Jones, Crisis of the American Orphanage, 1931 to 1940 in the Social Service Review, and the 1909 Proceedings of the Conference on the Care of Dependent Children.
If you like what we do, drop us a rating on your podcast app, find and follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and let us know what you want us to cover in future episodes.
And speaking of future episodes, pour yourself a Cosmo and slip on those Manolos. Next week, we're headed to the city on Adoption Pop.